Konnichiwa!
Welcome to the Jandals in Japan podcast.
Kia ora, Catherine.
Konnichiwa, Jane.
Well, it's Halloween we're recording this on.
That's
and
right.
I would say happy Halloween, but I don't observe Halloween myself. Are you up for anything this Halloween?
No, I don't. But I tend to give people gifts that are Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
Recently we had a retreat and some of the gifts, the chocolates, were Halloween.
They were.
And they were a hit.
They
Not
were.
because they're Halloween, because they're really tasty. But yeah, it's really in that kind of only in shape or format, katachi dake de, right? Only in format, but not celebrating it. I don't get it.
No, me either. I do like the All Saints Day, though, which is the 1st of November, visiting your family grave, taking care of your ancestors, all that thing, which is what Halloween's actually about. And the reason we're talking about Halloween today is quite the situation for Shibuya, right? Shibuya,
Yes.
one of the biggest sort of towns, I want to call it a town in Tokyo. It's like a little kind of area in Tokyo, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they just get so many visitors coming to Shibuya to experience the Scramble Crossing on Halloween.
Exactly.
In costume. And I don't know what people are actually doing there. Have you ever been there in Halloween?
No, because I've been too not frightened, but just afraid of how I get home from there. It's super busy. So many people collate there, and I think it's not unsafe. It's just there's a lot of people and a lot of stuff gets put on the ground and left on the ground. And even the little tidy Kiwis, who are little tidy Japanese people, later on tidy up. It still is a real mess that they leave behind. So I think this year the Shibuya mayor has said, not in my town, and banned people.
Yeah, so I was there recently and there was huge signs up saying there is no Halloween happening here in Shibuya this year. Do not come here. I was like, whoa, I was in English and Japanese and things.
Yeah.
And then I see on the TV that they have blocked off the Hachiko statue.
They have.
Is big because Hachiko has a long line in front of it every day, pretty much. People lining up to take their photo with the Hachiko statue. What's Hachiko, you might be saying? It's the dog, right? Hachiko, the dog statue, where people go to meet in Shibuya, right? It's the meeting place. And that's been blocked off.
Yeah, like actually covered up. Poor wee dog. Yeah, so I don't know quite what's happening. And I think since tonight, as we are recording this, it's the 31st of October, that it'll be maybe from tomorrow it's open okay, because no one's going to come and do Halloween on the 1st of November, are they? Or are they? I don't know. Maybe there's going to be a revenge.
Of the week till we get through Saturday and Sunday.
Could do. Although I have to say, in this neighborhood where I am, in the last week, there's quite a few bars in my area, and people have been dressing up and going into the local bars, which is interesting. They've been crowding in the streets. I have never seen that in this area in the past years. So maybe all of the Shibuya people are coming on over to Nishi Azabu. I don't know, but there you go. Yeah, quite remarkable, and just such a big, I guess it's a culture of Tokyo, a culture of Shibuya, and especially that this is not happening this year. There you go.
So who do we have on the show this week, Catherine?
On this episode, we have Jude Menezes, who is the coach of the field hockey. I know in Japan they call it field hockey as opposed to ice hockey. Right. The field hockey team, it's the women's field hockey team, Sakura Japan. He spent time in New Zealand as assistant coach for the Black Sticks women's team, and he's brought all his superpowers in hockey as a former Indian Olympian in the sport into Japan, and tells us a really amazing story.
Yeah, it's another great story. I was so interested to hear about how he's going and how he's managed this. He hasn't been here that long. And it's another story of a different sport. We often hear about rugby, but yeah, he's another sport that actually has a professional league in this country. Who knew?
Who knew? And it does have a little secret following. I've been doing a sort of survey of people that I've met, asking them if they know much about hockey in the last week or so, Jane. And there's a few who are secret hockey lovers and have played it during their universities. I think KO has a team.
Okay.
So that's interesting. I didn't know that, but we learned a lot about hockey. We learned a lot about the way leaders are as coaches of teams, and it was super great to listen to Jude.
Right, well, let's hear it from Jude, and happy Halloween, everyone. Kia ora, Jude. Welcome to the No, it's the wrong podcast. Let me start again. That's my other podcast. Kia ora, Jude. Welcome to the Jandals in Japan podcast. Great to have you on the show today.
Kia ora, Jane and Catherine. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yes, we like to start off with a warm-up question. So our question for you is, what is a Japanese sport or hobby you have never tried that you would like to?
Sumo wrestling.
Oh, what is it about sumo that you like or are interested in?
It gets over pretty quick. So,
it is. Yeah.
And it's also just a massive test of strength. So, I think it's pretty cool that you test your strength real short and sharp, done and dusted.
I was not expecting that one. How about you, Catherine? What would you do?
For me, let me see. I remember back when I studied Japanese, we had an hour learning judo, but I always thought judo would be really cool to learn in Japan, because what I loved with that, even that 1 hour lesson, I could go home and flip my brothers in the lounge room, like, woo, it's all in the hip. Well,
it's all in the hips.
I might be corrected by a judo expert, but it's a lot of hip strength, and I found I could do that. Even men, you can flip men. So I think I'll go for judo as the sport that I'd love to give it another try in Japan. What about you, Jane?
Well, I used to do karate, and I accidentally found myself in the most like hard out version of karate there is. Like there's different schools of karate, right? And so I didn't realize that there are actually nicer, not so punishing types of karate out there. So I think I would like to find, get back to karate, but doing a less kind of violent one with less contact, right? Less contacty type one. And also Aikido looks interesting to me as well. It's what they teach they teach the police judo as well, right? But Aikido is how you neutralize people, right? Ooh. You who are trying to attack you. It's all about sort of,
calming them down, you mean?
Like getting them under control, like, with different twisting their hands around and stuff, so that looks very interesting to me as well. Yeah. Oh, well.
Please tell me if you start doing any of these sports, because I want to steer clear of you guys. So. Hey, but Jude, I want to say, hey, Jude, I'm sure you've had that many, many times, but we really welcome you to the show. We're so privileged to have you as a former Indian Olympian. You've had 133, right, international test matches in your sport, I believe. And you migrated into New Zealand in 2002 with your family. And amongst other things, you were the assistant coach there for the Black Sticks women's team. And now you're in Japan as head coach of the Japanese women's hockey team, the Sakura Japan. Yay. And so we wanted to put your full bio in the show notes later on, but hear your story. Goodness me. Tell us a little bit more about your background and what brought you to New Zealand and then brought you over to Japan.
It's a long story, but I'll try to trim it down the best that I can. So yes, I played my hockey in India. Obviously, I'm of Indian origin. I moved to New Zealand in 2002 after I retired, and I just worked in a normal job until I got back into hockey in 2010. And then I got into the New Zealand Black Sticks women's program in 2014. I took on quite a few different roles. I started off as a goalkeeping coach because my background, I was a goalkeeper, and then doubled up as a manager because we traveled with only six staff, so you had to multitask and you had to do sort of dual roles. And then I gradually got in as the assistant coach, and then finally at the Tokyo Olympics, I went as the assistant coach for the Black Sticks women.
Wow, you were at the Tokyo Olympics.
Yes, I was. I was at Rio as well. Rio, I went as a manager and goalkeeping coach.
Well, of course, you were at the Olympics as a player in the past, right? And then on the coaching side, but you were here in Tokyo for the Olympics that almost didn't happen, right?
And it's a bit different because no crowds, right? So you're at the Olympic Games, the biggest sort of sporting stage in the world, and no crowds. But it
Yeah.
was superbly well conducted Olympic Games, despite not having the crowds.
Was that where you got this, maybe
Uh,
the insights into Japan from that trip here for the Olympics?
I did come into Japan in 2019 with the Blackpicks. We came in to have like a practice event. I have been following, because we scout other teams quite closely, or opposition. So I've always liked the way the Japanese played their hockey, the style of hockey, and it's quite attacking. And it was similar to what we did in New Zealand as well. At the time when I was involved, and I sort of like at that stage thought to myself, this would be a pretty interesting team to coach. And then things fell in place after the Tokyo Olympics, and I applied for the role basically, and yeah, I got it.
You
And
got it.
Wow.
So it was posted somewhere that you could apply for it.
I think that it was posted pre-Olympic Games. I'd sent in my CV at that stage, and then I got a call after the Olympic Games.
That is sweet. What do you love about hockey? What is it about hockey that draws you in?
It's a fast game, exciting. It requires a lot of skill, because you're doing everything at 100 miles an hour basically, and controlling it with a stick. Also, with the women's game, there are a lot of more subtleties than there are in the men's game. So you can actually see those subtleties in the women's game. So for me, that's quite exciting, because you can see the change of speed and the skill factor. It's more pronounced in the women's game. So for me, that's more exciting. Having played the men's game, on the flip side, it's a more power packed, faster sport. Yeah, so that kind of keeps me interested. So I follow both men and women's hockey, because we take a lot from men's hockey and we add into women's hockey. So a lot of the trends come out earlier in the men's game. And that's quite exciting, because it keeps changing. It's an ever evolving sport. It's also a family sport. So, generations, sometimes in Europe, like 2-3 generations of hockey players are all there on the field on a Sunday playing, juniors, proper senior hockey, and then masters hockey. So it's a true family sport. So for me, that's, it's an all-inclusive sport, men and women. For me, that's what I really love about it.
I'd love to hear, your thoughts about arriving in Japan and starting working with the team in Japan, and having come from India and then New Zealand and then Japan. What was the thing that was like, oh my, I was not expecting that?
Japan is very different. We were very fortunate in New Zealand to have a very structured high performance program. Hockey is quite a reasonably well-known sport in New Zealand, and quite a popular sport. It's not quite so popular in Japan. So it's not one of the marquee sports, if you like. So you don't get the same amount of popularity and following. It's a small community. It's a very close community, but it's a small community. So I think that was and continues to remain a challenge. It's different. It comes from India, where it's the national sport.
Yes,
So
yes.
everything is hockey, and funding is unlimited, and those kind of things. So it's a bit different when you're still working in the same sport, but the spotlight is not quite as bright as what you're used to.
Yeah. How
Yeah.
does that help you? Does it help you that the spotlight is not so bright, that you can really lend your own, Olympian spirit, the learnings from New Zealand, the learnings from the men's game into that a little bit more easily, because you're actually not in the spotlight?
I think, yeah, you're right, Catherine. I can do a little bit extra. I do have a little bit of a free hand to do things. On the flip side, there are quite a few systems that are already set and are quite rigid. There's room to maneuver in some areas, whereas some won't budge, basically.
How do you get the Japanese women's team, right? Sakura Japan team, Japanese women, to follow you as a coach? What is it that's key to bring them along with you?
I think it's important to relate firstly to the culture, understand. So when I'm coaching, I'm looking for understanding, because it's easy. It was easier in New Zealand, where I could just say something in English and I know that you've understood it. But in Japanese, I look for understanding. So we do a lot of video, and there are different types of people and different styles of learning. So I'm a kinesthetic learner, so I have to actually do things to understand. I make sure after the video, we actually walk through it for the ones like me who don't understand verbally, or just if you say it visually, I may not quite get it, but just having done it and doing it kinesthetically, I kind of look for all those learning styles. And I think that has helped quite a bit, because Japanese culturally are very shy. So even if they don't get it, they're not going to tell you that they don't get it. So I actually I seek understanding more than anything else with my coaching. And that's where I try to connect with the team.
Fabulous.
Yeah, that's really fabulous, because that also translates to anything in Japan. When you're in business in Japan, making sure you've got your counterparty understanding you. Is there any tip that you might have as to how do you read people? How do you do that in your actual daily life with the
what does
team?
a Japanese person who understands look like?
What do they look like?
Yeah. What do you see and you're like, she's got it?
I only believe in eye contact. And when I'm talking to people, I'm looking at them in the eye. And sometimes you can actually tell somebody who's got it just by looking at them. It would be very embarrassing if I went to someone directly and say, "Oh, no, I don't think you got this." But I actually go to them later on and say, can you talk through the scenario and try to put a different spin on it? So I'll try to get them to understand. I'm asking them for something different, but also checking that you actually get what I'm saying. You have to approach it a bit more subtly, in a non-invasive way.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, because you're doing it later on. You're not embarrassing them in front of others. You're doing it subtly. You're getting them in that usual, or one of the really true and tried methods is to have someone relate something back to you. Okay. And then you can find out how much they've heard. Are you working with a translator too then? Yeah?
Yes, I do have a translator that makes things a lot easier.
And also tricky, right? To use the translator, right? Tell us a little bit about that, because for a lot of new people coming to Japan, this is a reality of your work, is that you will be working with a translator, and you might not have done that before. I'm imagining you probably never used one much.
No, I had one before, and I think it's knowing when to stop. You get caught into your own flow of your explanation of what you're trying to get across to the team. And then you realize, oops, I've got to actually stop to let the translator in here. And initially, it was a challenge.
Yeah. So has that changed the way that you deal with your team? Thanks to this, you have to slow down, right? And take breaks.
That's right.
For understanding.
I have slowed down a bit. I have tried to make a conscious effort now to keep my sentences shorter, and then take breaks and let the translator in, and then so just get in and out.
And the role of the translator, I guess, is to become you, right? I see a lot of translators who step into your shoes, the shoes of the person talking, and they give the same emphasis and the same grunts and groans and smiley faces and all of that as if they are you when you're speaking. Is that how your translator is with you as well?
We're trying to get there, and the message I've said is you need to deliver my message. And again, I understand Japanese is a very tricky language. So when you say something very basic in English, it might take 2 or 3 sentences to translate in Japanese. So sometimes I'm wondering, what?
I just said, let's have a break. Yeah.
Wow. Do you have any? Yeah, that's interesting. Do you have any interesting stories or challenges or incidents that came up after you arrived in Japan that you can relate to us? What happened and how you got through that?
Well, I signed my contract in November 2021, and I only got into Japan in February because of the COVID situation. The day I left New Zealand was the day Japan closed their borders for foreigners. I didn't have my my resident card because I was going to get that when I arrived into Japan. So yeah, I left home and I got into Japan 2.5 months later. So I was living in hotels for 2.5 months, not knowing when I'm going to get into Japan, knowing that I couldn't go back into New Zealand because I was 10,000 on the waiting list. So
Oh
that
my
was
goodness, you're in
very,
limbo.
I was
Oh.
in limbo for 2.5 months. And during that time, we actually played 2 international tournaments.
You did not. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I started off in Korea, and I was supposed to go back to Japan with the team. And that didn't happen. So I was in Seoul for a month in a hotel.
Right.
There was another tournament in Oman. And then I requested Japan Hockey, instead of me sitting in a hotel, can you send the team 10 days earlier to Oman? And then we can actually have a training camp and play. And they agreed to that. And then I had a training camp with the girls in Oman and came back to Japan with the team.
Finally.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
There's a little bit of a twist to that as well. Now I finally get into Japan, finally land in Tokyo. And then 20 of us on that flight from Oman test positive.
Oh.
So now I'm in Tokyo, but now I'm in a quarantine hotel for 10 days. And by that stage, I'm done. I said, I just need to go home now.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no.
A bit of a mission getting into Japan, and it was quite a challenge. And at that stage, I kept telling myself over and over again, if the New Zealand borders were open, I would have gone back home and I would say, stop this job, I'm done.
But you stayed. You stayed.
I stayed.
Yeah. So what then, after all of that, were your sort of aspirations for the team? What was your mandate for yourself? I want this team to do X. And how are you leveraging that most recent experience with the New Zealand team, perhaps?
My goal is to get Sakura Japan into the top 6 of the world and to be the best team in Asia. So we just returned from the Asian Games and we didn't have quite an outing that I expected. We got knocked out in the semifinals on penalties. So and we lost one game in the tournament, and probably the most important game. But we leave to India in 2 days' time, and we go to play the Asian Champions Trophy, which is the top 6 teams in Asia. So a bit of an opportunity to redeem ourselves there. And then in January, we go for the Olympic qualifiers, and we most probably have New Zealand in the same pool as us. So that'll be quite interesting.
Ooh.
Ooh, that'll challenge you, won't it?
Where is Japan ranked at the moment? What's their current ranking?
We're ranked at number 11 after the Asian Games. We were 10 at the Asian Games, but we dropped ranking. And when I took over, we were 14.
Okay.
So by 3.
You've been as high as 10.
Yes.
And for context, where is New Zealand currently?
I think New Zealand is 9.
Oh.
And yeah. We're just thereabouts. So very close.
Wow. And so who's this world champion then? It must be
Netherlands.
Oh, the Netherlands. I was going to say India, but is India quite high on the rankings for women's hockey, or is it more men's hockey?
It is 7th in the world for women's hockey, and number 3 in the world for men's hockey.
I just have to ask, where are these players coming from? Because my children go to Japanese school. They've been very involved in the education system here in Japan, and I have never come across hockey once so far. Where are these players coming to you from?
So mainly at the top level, they come from 4 professional teams. So Coca-Cola has got a team based in Hiroshima. Sony has got a team based in Gifu. There's another team called Nanto Bank. And there's another team called GlaxoSmithKline, the pharmaceutical company, which is based in Tochigi, Nara. So all the top elite athletes come from here, but they come from universities as well. So and the universities are spread across the country. So not many from Tokyo though.
I could imagine there's not many hockey fields in Tokyo to play on. So when are these players starting to play hockey though? It must be like high school at the earliest, right? That they're encountering the sport hockey.
Yes, so in school, the school hockey system is very well set up. So is the university system. So they have a good grounding, probably a better grounding than we do back home in New Zealand in terms of the organized structure that they have in school hockey and university hockey.
Mm.
And they play a lot of hockey. They're playing even in the company teams that I pick my players from. They train 5 days a week, and they get employed, so they are professional hockey players.
So they work at the company in the daytime and then they train in the evening, right? Yeah, yeah.
I think they
There's
work.
nothing like that in New Zealand, is there, for New Zealand women hockey players or men hockey players at all, right?
Oh no, it's quite amateur sport in New Zealand. So a lot of our athletes back in New Zealand have to work or are studying full time. So it's and then they play hockey. So it's commendable to be able to do all of that and be that high in the world when you're an
Yeah.
amateur sports person. So that's
And they're
pretty.
working in New Zealand in different, companies
Just a
that are
regular
not
job.
related
Yeah.
to the hockey team. What do you think about that system then in Japan? Would that be something that New Zealand could even leverage, having corporate sponsored teams? What's your feeling on that?
I think they do have something similar in cricket.
Ah,
So
yes.
I know like big companies like ANZ, uh,
Mm.
they have some like a policy where you employ sports persons into your organization, and I think that's a good way to look after sport and help develop sport. Especially the big organizations can really help out there.
And speaking of that in business and sport, how do you think the sporting world translates into the business world with the sort of skills or attributes, or as you just said before, with the women's team here, the attacking style? How does that work with you and sort of correlating sports and business together?
I think it goes hand in hand, to be honest, because you're working in teams, you're working with different people, you've got to develop understanding. Your communication has got to be very good. You don't get along with everybody at work, but you still have to make things work. The reality in sport is that there is no tomorrow. I can't come back tomorrow and finish the job. Like the games today, it's played in the now,
Mm.
and then the outcomes are more immediate. Whereas at work, I can go back and hit the reset button, change things, maybe do something differently in the next quarter so that we can actually perform better. But well, with us here, if we don't qualify, there is no next quarter. So the pressure, I think, in sport is far greater than it is at work.
Mm.
Mm.
And I definitely believe that they go hand in hand. The way we try to implement our systems, it's pretty much running a company. I've got 35 athletes under me, got 15 staff, and I've got to make sure everybody's happy and now
Yeah.
going in the same direction.
We've heard from other prominent coaches of sports here in Japan that they have trouble securing players for the national team because the company is number one. Has that come up for you in hockey as well?
That is true.
Even in hockey, they can be reluctant to let players go for.
That is true. So
Yeah.
at the moment, like we're not going to the Asian Champions Trophy with one of our best players. So it is
Mm.
challenging because, and that's another point of difference because coming from India, it's like the country's number one. With New Zealand as well, you're playing for your country above
Yeah, of
everything.
course you go, right?
Yeah, that's it happens in hockey as well.
And
Mm.
yeah, have you developed some strategies to maybe get around that yet? Or is this still a work in progress? I mean, you haven't been here that long, but we've
It's
heard
still
of people having to fly in and have negotiations and aisatsu with various shachos and things like the company presidents and things to get things happening.
still a work in progress, but because it's not quite a big sport in Japan, a lot of it depends on funding. So as long as we can, I think, have enough funding to sustain ourselves and look after our players, then we have some leverage. At the moment, we don't have leverage. So no, I think it's still a work in progress.
I was talking to my husband about this and explaining to him, he's Japanese. So I was saying, did you know that the Japanese rugby team, for example, it's really tricky to get players? And he was like, that surprises me. So he was surprised. And then he thought about it for a while. And then he came back and he said, oh, it's because the company can't protect them. If they let you have their player and you take them off somewhere in the world and something happens to them, even if it's not on the hockey pitch, the company cannot protect them.
Right.
And that is their number one mandate, is to protect their workers and players, apparently. So this is their sort of supposedly guiding thing, and it was how they make their decisions. And I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. I thought they were just being difficult or something. So
it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Though it's like when you go on a business trip with a company in Japan, and it might be to somewhere that, for example, if we went, Jude, to India and you thought, oh, well, I'll just tag on a few more days with my family, it's usually a bit of a no-no, because the company are not there for, just like you said, Jane, in charge of you, looking after you when you're there by yourself for another reason. So that makes a lot of sense, what you've just said, and to be very careful of that when you're in business, to really be, know that that's a reason behind it. Thank you to your husband for that intel, Jane.
Yeah, well, if you've been on the experiencing end of this, can feel really suffocating, especially as a New Zealand person. Like, I am able to make decisions for myself. You don't have to look after me, kind of thing. But when the Icky Brown stuff hits the whirly thing, they will step up and do whatever it is to look after you. And I've experienced that as well. And yeah, it is kind of nice, but it can be very suffocating as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's like two sides of the coin that you got to accept both sides of it, because on one hand, we're trying to we're a performance team. We're playing international hockey at the highest level, and outcomes at the end of the day decide everything. And on the other hand, we've got to try to balance and understand the cultural aspect of the country that you're coaching as well. So great learning experience.
I think the longer you're here and the more you show who you are and what a trustworthy coach and person you are, it's going to go a long way with the people who make decisions on this sort of thing, and it's going to get easier for you. I think yeah.
It's quite interesting, actually. Every time we have discussions, they are quite accepting of what you have to say, but I think it's so deep set in the culture that's very difficult to make a change. And if the change does come about at some stage, then it'll take a little bit of time, because you've got to convince a lot of people.
Yeah, I want to see some social proof, right? And then they might come round to it. So yeah, just don't give up, I think, is the main thing. Keep banging your head.
Right.
That's what we often hear from our guests, isn't it, Catherine?
Absolutely. Don't bang your head.
No, try not to bang your head, but you will feel like that for a while until...
do need to do that in order to get a little bit through and push down the washi door, right? The paper door, and get yourself a little bit further through. Wow, Jude, that brings us to this big question of the one thing, that if you're writing, say, a chapter in a book for coming into Japan, the one bit of advice that you would write in that handbook for others who are coming in, say, from New Zealand to Japan, to know, and that could be from your coaching perspective or as a person, what should they know, and what would you write in that handbook?
I would say, firstly, embrace it. Embrace the new culture. It's different, but it's a great culture. We talk about growth mindset. Come in with an open mind. Expect the unexpected as well, because it's a lot different to what you know, and it's a lot different from what you're used to. So especially if you're coming from New Zealand, it's like I've spent 21 years in New Zealand now, so I think I've got a good handle of New Zealand. Like my boys have grown up there, and they grow up to be very independent, and make your own decisions, make your own choices, and you're in control of your own life, your own decisions. Be prepared for that not to happen as well. because a lot of
You
times
said it. Yeah.
you have control over those things.
Well noticed for someone who has not been here that long. Very well noticed. You
Yeah,
might not
it
always be at
flips.
peace with that, but yeah, very well
Perfect.
noticed, Jude. Yeah.
Gosh, anything else that you see, Jude, that's trending in Japan that you think, oh gosh, New Zealand could do that and help Japan with that?
English language, and I think that's been for a while now, and a lot of people in Japan now. I've got a message from one of the ex-Black girls that I coached. Like her partner plays rugby for one of the companies here in Japan, and she was looking at finding an English-speaking job next year. So I said, oh, I'll try and ask around, and
Mm,
I think those opportunities will be quite good. And she could play a little bit of club hockey as well.
mm.
And
Great.
She'd be
she can
very
get
welcome,
a
right?
decent job, which keeps her occupied as well. That'd
Oh,
be
she could imagine getting into one of those four teams that you mentioned before and working with, English and also helping to coach those teams.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
there you
That's
go. Tell her
so
that.
opportunity. Yeah,
Yeah, there are opportunities. You just need to know who to
Exactly.
ask sometimes, right?
like yeah.
Is there a chance for the Sakura Japan team to visit New Zealand and play against the Black Sticks or another local team there? Is that possible?
There's definitely there wasn't the pipeline earlier this year. We were supposed to go there in April, but we were also touring Europe, so I had to make a choice because we were in Europe for a month. And we've had New Zealand for 15 days, and I had to cut one tour. So I actually chose the. I was getting 13 matches in Europe during that time, so
Good
I
practice.
Mm,
Yeah.
amazing.
built up in the Asian Games. But I'm
Yeah.
in contact with the high performance
That's
director
good.
in New Zealand, and we're trying to get New Zealand to come here in March
Oh,
2024.
that would be great. Let us
Yeah,
Mm.
know.
Yeah,
I
let
will.
us know what's happening. We'd
Let
love
us
to
know.
support. Yeah.
Exactly. And, the Australia New Zealand Chamber of Commerce in Japan has a sports for business committee. And I know they'd love to hear
Cool.
about this and have the players come and speak. We've done that with certain teams that have come from Australia or New Zealand, and it's really great to hear it from the players. So please keep that in mind. That'd be great.
Definitely, definitely. So it's in the pipeline, and hopefully a lot of it is riding on these qualifiers. So no decision both for New Zealand and Japan.
And
Mm,
So
mm.
yeah, wow. And how do we get to see the Sakura Japan women's team play here in Japan? Where do we get tickets or when are they playing?
we don't have any international hockey. We had France come over in July, and we
Mm.
played 4 matches against France in Tokyo. We don't play too much of hockey
Hmm.
in Japan.
Mm.
So we should go and support those company teams, though, wherever we hear that they're playing.
Absolutely.
Great.
If you're around, in one of those areas that they're playing in, please do. It'd be really cool.
Really
On
cool.
Yeah, on
I love
YouTube.
it. Anything else there, activities or promotions that you've got going on there with Sakura Japan or yourself that you'd like to share with us and listeners?
At the moment, we're just preparing for like the Asian Champions Trophy. So that's available online. It's a website called watchhockey.com.
Mm.
Actually see us playing there. And then the Olympic qualifiers in January will also be online actually. So I think it will be on Watch Hockey as well.
Good.
That's great. There is somewhere we can see it. It doesn't. We don't have to wait for NHK or whatever to broadcast it for us. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything you wanted to ask the Jandals?
Like I just want to make a comment. I think it's a cool podcast to have. And it's a cool way to maintain that connection with New Zealand. I immerse myself in my work so much, so I'm not really a super social person at times. It's great that like your podcast can actually connect
Hmm.
people like me, back to New Zealand.
Wonderful. Well, please do share it with your former teammates, right? With the Black Sticks, we'd love them to be interested in signing up and listening to it. Your mates that you hang around with in Japan, we'd love them to hear it and share with their friends as well. That's part of the mission for us. Well, Jude, thank you so much. And congratulations on being what we will call a successful Jandal in Japan. 21 years in New Zealand. Goodness me, it's almost more than I had.
Exactly. Yeah.
And thank you so much for telling us about your story, for sharing your tips for success and working in with the culture in Japan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Thank you very much, Jane. A real pleasure to be on your show. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, what a really awesome, informative chat with Jude there. What was your takeaways, Catherine?
Oh, well, I just want to say congratulations to him first up for being such an amazing Olympian. And I can see by the way he delivered everything today, his mindset, his calmness must be one of the central pieces to him being really successful in his whole career, sporting.
He was a goalkeeper, right? That's pretty intense.
Goalkeepers, like, it comes down to your end and it's all on you to keep the ball out of the cage, right? I mean, goodness, wow. Really loved it. I really am still thinking about his calmness. And he talked to us a little bit after we finished there, talking about body language and how his body language transfers to the team. So he has to be really careful because it rubs off on them. So I thought that was a really good analogy to the way that we as leaders or managers in a group or in business, also the way that we present absolutely impacts other people. It just brought it home again. So I wanted to mention that because he mentioned that after we kind of were about to slip away.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's not just what you say, and even like if you're in Japan, what you say could be minimally understood or come through in a minimal kind of way, but your body language, your presence, your mood, attitude is screaming very loudly almost, right?
And you think it's not.
And you think it's not. You think nobody notices that you're really annoyed about what just happened or whatever.
Yeah, if you're storming inside, if you don't calm it down. Yeah. I also really loved how he said, and that, that one of the big comments he made about, you think that you're independent in New Zealand, you think you've got your life in control, you can control all your decisions, and then you come to Japan and things flip.
Yeah.
And you really have to be prepared to embrace the culture, have an open mind, and expect the unexpected. That was just gold.
Yeah, nailed it. If you can do that, you will be a major success here. If you can notice when you're being that, individualistic, I control all of my decisions person. Yeah, that doesn't work here very often. So well done for noticing that.
That was brilliant. And I mean, that was my most biggest, my biggest takeaway. And I love the stats on where Japan is at and how he's, wanting to bring the team. He's got a great goal. So he's got a mission. You don't arrive in Japan and then just figure out what's going to happen as it comes along. But he's got that aim for the team to be top 6 in the world.
Well, I
brilliant.
Just
loved
so
how
much
he's taking challenges on and going heads in, but also being such a calm and well-centered person the way he's doing it. We can learn a lot from Jude. Thank you so much, Jude, for today.
Yes, thank you, Jude. I need some of your calm. I'm going to remember that as I go about my day here in Fukushima. Thank you so much for a great episode, Jude. We wish you lots of success here in Japan and keep us posted how you're going and how the team's going. We want to cheer for you as you proceed with your plan to become number 6 in the world.
Absolutely. And we laid down a challenge to Jude after we spoke as well to set up a New Zealand coaches community in Japan. There's so many of you here. So why not? If there's anyone who's listening, get it going. Reach out to Jude and say, I want to be in your community. And it starts with just having a couple of casual drinks and going from there. Building that knowledge, sharing for people who are coming new into the country, for those who've been here for a longer time. And leaving a legacy. Jude said leaving a legacy. I think that's just absolutely brilliant. So there's the challenge. The gauntlet is laid down.
It out loud.
Go, Jude.
Podcast. All right. Keep listening to Jandals in Japan. More amazing episodes coming your way very soon. See ya.
Bye. Thanks for listening. Make sure you check out our guests' links in the show notes.
This podcast is brought to you today by Catherine O'Connell Law and Pod Launch with Jane. If you have a great story you think should be on the show, come and find us on LinkedIn or Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. See you next time.
Mata ne!